Stop.
Discuss the 2026 Chicago Business Outlook. It'll be very interesting to see what shifts they feel the city is or needs to make so that we're thriving economically into the future. That should be a good conversation as well. But first, we're getting an update on what could have been a terrible tragedy in Michigan City. Keywords could have been a man arrested at a church with explosive devices and a firearm. And I have Captain Kevin Urbanchik, a commander, Division of Professional Standards with the Michigan City Police Department, joining me now. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Take me back to March 11th. How did this go down?
Yeah, it was a horrific incident that was obviously stopped by our officers quickly to prevent tragedy from happening. But on March 11th, about 5:56 p.m. local time, the LaPorte County Regional Dispatch Center had received a 911 call from a caller who reported that there was an individual who was on their way to a Full Gospel Church in Michigan City, and this person had explosives as well as a firearm on them and had the intentions of actually killing one of the parishioners that was actually attending this church. When the officers had arrived, they did discover this individual. They later identified him as 41-year-old Michigan City resident Matthew Schutz. When officers ended up approaching Mr. Schutz to talk to him, they realized that something didn't really seem right with him. They noticed that there was some bulgy objects in his pockets. When they did approach him, he ended up taking off and tried to flee from the building. He was quickly apprehended by our officers. And at the time that he was arrested, they noticed that he had multiple explosive devices on his person. We immediately called the Porter County Sheriff's Office bomb squad and had some of their technicians to come out and assist us with this investigation. Then after that, we ended up getting a search warrant for Mr. Schutz's residence in the 200 block of Brinkman Avenue. And it was at that point where we were able to recover additional manufacturing materials for explosive devices inside of his residence. We were able to collect all that additional evidence. He was eventually arrested, and then he was charged with 1 count of attempted murder as a level 1 felony, 1 count of possession of a destructive device as a level 2 felony, stalking as a level 5 felony, and then resisting law enforcement as a misdemeanor. He was issued a $100,000 cash bond out of the court, and at this point, we're just allowing the judicial process to take its course.
Wow. Okay, I have several questions about what you just read off there. When you say stalking, was this a domestic situation?
It was. So the caller who called 911 is known to Mr. Schutz. They've been having a domestic feud for quite some time. And the person that Mr. Schutz was intending to target was also known to him as well.
And was Mr. Schutz known to you all prior to this incident?
Yes, Mr. Schutz is known to the Michigan City Police Department. He does have a history with our officers, so we are aware of his background as well as his history with our agency.
Wow. Okay. And I'm sure that kind of had to heighten things even more if you're already kind of aware of the person in advance, and maybe what they're capable of or what their background is like. Okay, the explosive devices, were these like homemade devices or were they purchased online? Or I mean, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we did discover that they were homemade devices. The items that he ended up purchasing over the internet were able to be put together to make an explosive device. So we were very fortunate that this didn't actually go the way that he had wanted to, because we did discover with the amount of explosives that he did have on his person, it would have created not only significant property damage, but serious bodily injury, if not death, not only to the person he was intending to target, but the other parishioners that were inside the same room as him.
My. And what was going on at the church at the time? I mean, that he's sitting in there. Immediately when I hear about this, I think about like the church in South Carolina. Where the 9 parishioners, Emmanuel, Mother Emmanuel, I believe it was called, where the parishioners are sitting in there, and this guy walks in, sits among them. I mean, they're going about everything. Essentially, at church, you're saying, "Come all, come one, come all." But this person is right in the midst of them, with intentions to kill all of them. What was happening at the church when he made it in there?
Correct. It's very similar to the situation that you just previously described. So, from what we were able to determine, that he went inside the church, he was able to sit in one of the pews around other parishioners. And while he was waiting for services to begin, he was able to obviously find out where the person that he was intending to target was sitting. And again, we were very fortunate that this didn't go the way that he had planned. I don't know why he delayed to continue out his plan, but we're just very thankful that it was a delayed process, and that obviously nobody was seriously hurt, nobody was killed, and obviously there was no property damage. It was almost like a textbook ending. You couldn't ask for a better ending to the way that this went.
Yeah, I mean, how long was he in there?
We haven't been able to determine just how long he's been in there, but again, it was right before services started, so we're assuming probably anywhere from maybe like 15 to 20 minutes.
Goodness. So anything could have happened in that amount of time.
Correct.
Wow. Given all the things that we just went over, I'm pretty shocked, honestly, that there was a cash bond associated with this. Were you all?
Yeah, we were shocked. Obviously, this individual had intentions to seriously injure, if not kill, not only the person he was intending to target, but obviously others. So you have to take that into serious consideration about his ideals with his intended plan. So yes, we were shocked, but at the same time, it's a decision that we have to respect. It's a decision made by the judge, and unfortunately, that's the way that it is.
Wow. And so he's back out in the public right now.
He's not been released, at least not to my knowledge, as of a short time before I was able to log in. He's still in custody at the LaPorte County Jail.
Okay, all right. So he has not bonded out at this point in time. I would like you to talk about security at churches. We just had last week the Temple Israel in Michigan, where someone takes a vehicle and drives right into that synagogue in the middle of the day. I listed off to you the situation in South Carolina from several years ago, but whether it be to take out one person or many, churches are targeted, and it is disheartening to so many of us, but it is a reality, and one that requires a different maybe course of action now moving forward for churches.
Correct. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up. So last week we were contacted by the Jewish community, and they wanted security at one of their temples because they were concerned, and obviously had received alerts from the FBI that there's the potential of people targeting the Jewish community and even these places of worship. And so this specific Jewish community ended up hiring a retired police officer for security. And then we've even provided officers to do walkthroughs while the services are going on, and just simply make sure that our presence is known, so that way we can try to not only prevent but hopefully deter any future conflicts from happening, not only at the Jewish community, places of worship, but all across all the other religions. And this specific church where Mr. Schutz was at, shortly after this had happened, the pastor felt it was appropriate to hire off-duty officers to work security, just because obviously the threat that was made, and obviously the intense climate that is currently going on now across the country. Unfortunately, we live in a very dangerous time where people they take out their frustrations in many different ways, and unfortunately they tend to result to violence. And we're just glad that this didn't happen here in Michigan City.
Absolutely. So what will happen now? I mean, give us kind of an outlook to how the judicial system will play out from here, and maybe a timeline if there is an expectation there.
Sure. So a timeline, that's unpredictable. Obviously, what's going to happen is he's going to make his initial appearance in court. He's going to be informed what his charges are. He'll be informed that he has a $100,000 cash bond. And then he'll likely be asked if he plans on hiring an attorney. And then I'm sure an initial plea of not guilty will be entered either by him or his attorney and even the judge. And then obviously this will have to go through the judicial process. All the facts about this case will eventually be brought out in court. And whether it's brought in front of just a judge or whether it's brought in front of a jury, that's going to be determined whether or not he's innocent or guilty for what had happened. But again, it could take anywhere from, maybe 6 months, a year, a couple years. It just depends on how long that this is drawn out between the prosecutor's office, defense attorney, as well as a judge.
Wow. And just maybe on a final note, can you speak to situational awareness and how we can all be maybe just more cautious moving forward given the climate that we are in?
Absolutely. That's a great point. I'm glad that you brought that up. So we always preach to our community is that if you see something and it doesn't look right, it doesn't seem right, or maybe if you hear a discussion and again, it doesn't seem right, doesn't feel right, you kind of got that gut feeling that maybe something just doesn't seem right with what's going on, please call your local authorities so that way they can go out there and they can address the situation, because it's something like this that we were able to address in a very quick manner thanks to the caller, and we prevented again, obviously a tragedy from happening. And it was all because of somebody that was alert, knew what was going on, and felt that it was best to get that information out so authorities can deal with it as quickly as possible.
Well, we're grateful for the person that did speak up in time, and we're also grateful for you all's wonderful work getting there in time to prevent more of a tragedy from taking place. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Please take care.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and have a good afternoon.
Same to you. Be safe. All right,
Thank
everyone.
you.
It is 1:13 right now. I did say that we were coming off the heels of elections in the state, and I do believe that the new gubernatorial candidate for governor is speaking right now. Let's listen in to Darren Bailey.
State rep. I served as a state senator, some very conservative districts, and we come up here up north and we find out that, not everybody thinks the same. We're focusing on what people do agree on, 80-20. That's affordability, getting our property taxes, getting our utility bills, getting cost of living under control. That's safety, protecting our people, and that is revamping education. Those are the areas that I'm focused on this time, to earning the respect and trust. We've got years of work in Illinois in the General Assembly and with the people to correct that. When we fix that, we fix Illinois. Then we will understand each other and we can start having discussions about other issues.
What's your financial picture looking like? Because your ward CESPA is one of the smaller ones. Have you gotten any commitments from Republicans like Rick Heidner?
We are working on that. Rick Heidner's stepped up to the plate. He's going to be. I wanted him to be here. Rick, you still in here? I wanted him to be up here with me now, but he had to leave, and Rick Heidner will have a voice. I have no doubt that the resources that we need will come. We don't have to match J.B. Pritzker dollar for dollar. What we need is people to get registered to vote, to show up to vote. Too many people are hurting in Illinois. Get the apathy out of the way. We're going to be in the churches. We're going to be with the civic groups. We're going to be all over Chicago, waking people up across Illinois to get our voter turnout out. And that is going to be the source of victory, aside from money. But the money will show up. I have no doubt. So.
All right, listening in there to, again, gubernatorial candidate for governor, Darren Bailey, as he is fresh off. And this is Don Tracy, who was coming up next. He will now be the gubernatorial Senate candidate who will be facing Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Well, I've been blessed with success, such I can self-fund to a reasonable extent to build a good team. We had a great team that helped us win this primary. And we're going to double that team, and I can do that. I can't self-fund completely. I'm going to need lots and lots of help. It's a big state. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar contest. But I've been raising money for Republican candidates for the last 20 years, including as state chairman. And so I know there's resources in this state and nationally, and with their help, we'll be competitive.
How do you hope to attract those outside Republican donors and outside conservative interest groups?
Well, number one, I have to run a great campaign. Number two, I have to show that I can raise money on my own, and I've already done a lot of that. We did 8 fundraisers during the primary, friend raisers, you might call them as well. But and then, as state chair, I've raised money from a lot of different donors throughout the state, and that's what the NRSC is going to want to see, that I have that ability, and I've done it.
Some folks have expressed concern that Stratton doesn't have any federal experience. How does your experience compare to hers, and what message might you send to voters about why your experience is better?
Well, I'm just hoping our contest with Lieutenant Governor Stratton is not just about F-bomb commercials. I hope it's at a higher level than that, because there's some fundamental differences between Juliana Stratton and Don Tracy. I mean, I'm for a culture of economic freedom where we celebrate work and work ethic. And Juliana Stratton and other Democrats seem to be in favor of a culture of welfare dependency. They seem to advocate for a bigger welfare state and more welfare. And they complain when we have a tax bill, as was passed a year ago, that required some very modest work requirements for able-bodied adults to stay on food stamps and Medicaid, 20 hours. Under Bill Clinton, it was 30 hours. And they whine and they call that cuts in Medicaid when it's just work requirements. I grew up working. I started working at age 10. I worked myself through grade school, high school, college. I was almost bankrupt in my 30s. But work, the best thing my parents ever gave me was a work ethic. There are too many people that don't work today. We want to get people off their couches and out in the workforce. And that's the federal policies that I will advocate. It will make them better and will make our nation better and stronger.
Last question.
Okay, listening in there to, again, gubernatorial Senate candidate Don Tracy, who will be facing off against Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. And boy, the gloves are already off, right? As you were listening to him there, kind of talk first and foremost about her commercials that did drop the F-bomb multiple times, as he said, when she was going up against Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy and Congresswoman Robin Kelly, among others. Those were the top 3 in that particular race. But she was making her case that she is the fighter who will take the case from citizens here in the state of Illinois to Donald Trump's doorstep. That's what she said last night. But that was a very controversial ad for both Democrats and Republicans. There were a lot of people, and it became a national topic. There were a lot of people who were very uncomfortable with that ad. He talked about he advocating, and the Republican Party advocating for economic freedom, celebrating working, and he contrasted that with Lieutenant Governor Stratton and the Democratic Party, saying they want people to be welfare dependent, and that they are whining, and that there are too many people who do not work in the state. The overall big question for Republicans right now in our state, and both Don Tracy and also Darren Bailey were asked this question because it is a major factor, is the dollars, the funding. Will Republicans from out of state pour into Illinois feeling like it's maybe doable, that these races are winnable, or will they stay out of it? And you are facing off against a billionaire and the person that he is also funding, being his former lieutenant governor here. Darren Bailey says he will not have the dollars to match J.B. Pritzker dollar for dollar. He needs people to vote, and that will be what's most important in the end. So it will be very interesting. Like I said when we started here, the setup has happened, and now we move forward to the general election, the midterms coming up in November. And again, the tough talk is already beginning. So no one has wasted time on that. And just so you know, we are going to be catching up with our political reporter, Paris Schutz, in the 3 o'clock hour. He is doing a one-on-one interview with Governor J.B. Pritzker, and so we'll be getting more information from him on the heels of that a little bit later on in the show. It is 1:20 though, and we want to get in a quick 2-minute break, and then we're going to get to our next guest, who is already on the line. Welcome back, everyone. It's 1:22 right now, and coming off of elections, it really doesn't matter who wins, who is going to be governing our state moving forward. They're going to have to tackle the economic headwinds and a shifting economy. And so I want to go ahead and bring in Tony Sciarrino, who is the head of BMO Commercial Bank US, to talk a little bit about where we go in terms of the economy and how we approach this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Anita. I'm glad to be here.
You all have released now the Chicago Business Outlook for 2026. I liken this to like a state of the state, if you will. And if we're likening it to that, what would be the state of our union here in the state of Illinois?
I do think it's as we said in the report, cautiously optimistic, where I think there's a lot of aspects of the economy that are growing, especially as we look at information technology and finance. Given Chicagoland being sort of the financial hub of America, we're still seeing a lot of strength there. And given what's going on in AI and information technology, we're seeing a 13% growth, not only through data centers, but the whole ecosystem, if you would, of technology and how it's working through the economy in Chicagoland.
Data centers are so controversial. I mean, we are awaiting another decision for Joliet on a data center there that should be coming, I believe, tomorrow. We talked with the folks in Naperville as they were, kind of going back and forth as to whether one would be there. We've spoken to folks in Aurora as they were considering it as well, and they even put a moratorium on that decisions for data centers for a while. How would you convince people to look at data centers in this economy moving forward?
Yeah, I think if you look at it more broadly, the financial aspect of data centers, where not only creating jobs, and we'll get into a little bit of how technology is impacting the businesses that I meet with every day, and not only in Chicago, but around the country. And we've seen a very positive impact from that, right? With CapEx investments in a number of these different areas and creating jobs. And we've seen that throughout Chicagoland as well. So net a positive as it relates to the business and finance community.
You know, we have a special airing tonight about a data center in the South Loop even. I mean, it is one of those conversations that really every community is seemingly going to end up having to have. It just feels like we're moving in that direction. But it is a part of the diverse economy that we all have to face, and like what is included in a diverse economy.
Yeah. And as you look at it, and I'm going to want to take a minute just to take a step back. As you look at technology and how it's impacted, like I mentioned, I have CEO roundtables around the country and in Chicago, and we talk about sort of, if you would, how businesses are utilizing technology in such a different way, right? It started in, if you would, in the prompt business, where people were going to their different technology tools and using prompts. Now they're looking at using technology to optimize businesses, right? Optimize and taking cost out where you can, and really reallocating those resources into a growth mode. But most companies right now are focused on productivity, how they're improving productivity. The next phase of this evolution is how you increase revenue profitably and grow. So we're sort of at this, like, as you look at the opportunities ahead of us, I'm really encouraged by that. And our data showed that and how we're out talking to CEOs around how they're investing. So overall, just kind of allude to what we talked about earlier, this is a very positive for the Chicagoland economy.
And so when you talk about the 13% growth, what's included in that? And from a bare bones, I mean, what can we see that contributes to that?
The main thing is more efficient companies, right, that are reallocating resources for growth opportunities. And those growth opportunities come in lots of different vehicles depending upon companies and industries. So, the main advantage we have in Chicago is the nature of our workforce. We have both a strong sort of white collar and blue collar workforce, and we've seen that, and that investment in that workforce continues. And that's an advantage that we have over a lot of other cities in America.
What are your concerns moving forward?
The concern I have is that the new normal today is uncertainty, and not making a decision is a decision. So the companies that are waiting for more clarity, other companies are just going to go right past them. So what I see in our most successful CEOs is they're making strategic decisions. They're stress testing those decisions to make sure they have capital efficiencies, et cetera. But making a decision is an important decision, and not waiting for more certainty of, if it's a trade situation, what's going on geopolitically, what's going on with gas prices, et cetera. You have to make decisions. You have to navigate your business. And those are the companies that have been most successful, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at our 2026 outlook, how does it compare to maybe what you saw a year or 5 years ago?
What we've seen is this cautiously optimistic view. I think historically everyone was growing at a pretty good pace, and you really didn't have to make as many decisions sort of in this high growth mode. It's like jump on the train and continue to grow. But now it's being a little bit more strategic, how to use utilizing tools and technology to help you navigate, to be more efficient at what you're doing. So if you would, it's a little bit harder than it has been historically, but there's still such a huge opportunity for profitable growth for many companies in Chicagoland. And I'm excited to see that when I'm out visiting with companies around Chicagoland.
What is that like? I mean, when you're preparing to give this business outlook, what is that like? What are the conversations you're having, the questions you're asking to compile this the way you have?
Yeah, so I spend every week in a different city in the U.S., and obviously Chicago is our home base and where I spend most of my time. And I have CEO roundtables. So think about a room of 12 CEOs, and we typically go around the table and we talk about sort of three things. They talk about their business with one another, so they learn from one another. And then I ask two questions. I ask the question of what is your largest growth opportunity, and what is something that's sort of getting in your way? And we go around the table, and sometimes there's some similarities, but it's interesting to me as we've been going around the room, most of the feedback has been around how I utilize technology. And about 3 to 5 years ago, that feedback was more around labor and lack thereof. And so the narrative has changed a little bit of how do you deploy, and not that labor is not important, but it's just a different narrative of how you redeploy labor in different ways. So that's sort of how we got a lot of these data points, is hearing directly from CEOs around the U.S. And then specifically in each of the geographies, we did a deep dive. And this is a deep dive into Chicagoland, but we did deep dives in cities. We did it in 12 cities around the U.S. The cities that we felt that we needed to invest in personally as I'm managing our 3,000 person commercial banking business at BMO.
Tony Sciarrino, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
All right. You take care. Everyone, as we were speaking with Tony, who is the head of BMO Commercial Bank U.S., Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, began his announcement on interest rates. So we definitely want to listen into this.
Remained weak. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects that real GDP will rise 2.4% this year and 2.3% next year, somewhat stronger than projected in December. In the labor market, the unemployment rate was 4.4% in February and has changed little since late last summer. Job gains have remained low. A good part of the slowing in the pace of job growth over the past year reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. Other indicators, including job openings, layoffs, hiring, and nominal wage growth, generally show little change in recent months. In our SEP, the median projection of the unemployment rate is 4.4% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in February, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.0%. These elevated readings largely reflect inflation in the goods sector, which has been boosted by the effects of tariffs. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have risen in recent weeks, likely reflecting the substantial rise in oil prices caused by the supply disruptions in the Middle East. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation this year is 2.7% and 2.2% next year, a bit higher than projected in December. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5 to 3.75%. From last September through December, we lowered our policy rate 0.75 percentage point, bringing it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral. This normalization of our policy stance should continue to help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2%. But the implications of events in the Middle East for the U.S. economy are uncertain. In the near term, higher energy prices will push up overall inflation, but it is too soon to know the scope and duration of the potential effects on the economy. We will continue to monitor the risks to both sides of our mandate. We are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate under what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.4% at the end of this year and 3.1% at the end of next year, unchanged from December. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they are not a committee plan or decision. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we'll make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We at the Fed will continue to do our jobs with objectivity, integrity, and a deep commitment to serve the American people. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Colby Smith of the New York Times. There's been some debate about whether the Fed should look through the inflation that will come from higher oil prices stemming from the Middle East conflict. Is that the right approach at this juncture? And to what extent does the fact that inflation has been above target for roughly 5 years now influence the committee's thinking around this?
So, first, let me say we're well aware of the performance of inflation over the last few years and how a series of shocks have interrupted progress that we've made over time. And that happened most recently with tariffs, and now there will be some effects on inflation coming forward. The thing that's really important that we see this year is progress on inflation through a reduction in goods inflation as the one-time effects on prices of tariffs go through the system, go through the economy. That's the main thing we're looking for going into this exercise. And we need to be seeing that to sort of understand that we actually are making progress, because on net we didn't make progress. And if you look at total core inflation, it's about 3%, and some big chunk of that, between 1/2 and 3/4, is actually tariffs. So we're looking for progress on that. The question of whether we look through the energy inflation doesn't really arise until we have kind of checked that box. It, of course, is kind of standard learning that you look through energy shocks, but that's always been dependent on inflation expectations remaining well anchored. And I think now it's also dependent on what you mentioned, which is that broader context of 5 years now of inflation above target. We have to keep all of those things in mind, and the question of looking through when it does arise will be one to approach not lightly, but in the context that you mentioned.
And just on the SEP, can you help us make sense of why there is still a bias to cut for most officials this year, despite the upward revision to headline and core inflation and the essentially unchanged forecast for growth and unemployment? Just curious, kind of what's the genesis behind the need? What's the need for the cut?
Yeah, so there are 19 people, and so 19 reasons, 19 individual submissions. But if you notice, the median didn't change, but there was actually some movement toward a meaningful amount of movement toward fewer cuts by people. So 4 or 5 people went from 2 to 1, let's say, 2 cuts to 1 cut, and each person has individual, stories behind what they want to do. But essentially, it is that the forecast is that we will be making progress on inflation. Not as much as we had hoped, but some progress on inflation. It should come as we start to see in the middle of the year progress on tariffs, going through once and then tariff inflation coming down. We should be seeing that. And the rate forecast is conditional on the performance of the economy. So if we don't see that progress, then you won't see the rate cut.
Thank you. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to follow up a little bit and to be clear, is the higher inflation penciled in here for 2026 solely the result of the oil shock or something else?
So that's going to be part of it. But, that wouldn't be most of core, right? So the oil shock for sure shows up here. Some of that will be in core as well. But yes, but no, there's also just the feeling that we haven't seen, the progress that we had hoped for on core goods and on tariffs and on the rest of it. So for whatever reason, people did write up their inflation forecast. That will certainly be tied to events in the Middle East and the price of oil, but it's also, I think, a reflection of the slow progress we've seen on tariffs, which we believe we will see. It's just a question of how long it takes for them to get all the way through the economy, and it just takes some time.
Right. And is the lack of change in the SEPs, again, just to explicate this a little bit, more due to the expectation that the oil portion of this will pass through, or more out of concern that there is a potential blow to consumption and growth coming in the form of wealth effects with the stock market down, in the form of gas prices, diverting spending from other parts of the economy?
So I didn't get the second part of your question.
The consumers are going to be potentially diverting money to gasoline from other parts of the economy. There could be a growth shock or a redistribution of spending there that can hit consumption, wealth effects as well. I guess I'm wondering, is the rate forecast not changing because you think the oil shock is going to be temporary, or because you want to be sure you're positioned in case growth starts to slow?
So the thing I really want to emphasize is that nobody knows. The economics effect could be bigger, they could be smaller, they could be much smaller or much bigger. We just don't know. So people are writing down something that seems to make sense to them, but have no conviction that to your point, if we have if we have a long period of much higher gas prices, that's going to weigh on consumption. That'll weigh on disposable personal income, and it'll weigh on consumption. But we don't know if that's going to happen. Something quite different than that. We might have much lower than expected pass-through. So people write down, this is one of those SEPs where a number of people mentioned if we were ever going to skip an SEP, this would be a good one, because we just don't know. So I wouldn't say there's a conviction that this is going to go through quickly or not quickly. It's just you got to write something down, and this is something that is that people wrote down. We don't debate how long. How do you do that? We wouldn't be able to debate what the length of or size of these effects would be. We just have to kind of make an individual statement. And also, what you've written down before you'll be reluctant to move too far away from that, just because you don't know. It's so unclear what the direction from this particular end will be. Meanwhile, the growth has been solid. And inflation, the overshoot is mainly from the goods and tariffs. And, the labor market is, the unemployment rate, of course, is little changed since September. You have a very, very low break-even rate, apparently, for new jobs, with little growth in either demand or supply. But the U.S. economy is doing, pretty well. It's just we don't know what the effects of this will be, and really no one does.
Mr. Chair, in the past, the staff has suggested that higher oil prices, they have a hit to consumption, which Howard was talking about, but that's somewhat offset by increases to domestic production. I wonder if you could talk about that dynamic, especially to the extent that how much U.S. production is happening right now.
So the first thing is there is, the original thinking, the long-standing thinking, put it that way, is that you do look through energy shocks. But as I mentioned, that's conditioned on inflation expectations and that kind of thing. So, sorry, your question was?
What the staff is saying about, and has said in the past, about.
So there'll be an offset.
Offsets, yeah.
So that's true. We're a net exporter of energy, right? So any effects on employment and economic activity and spending would be offset to some extent by the fact that our oil companies will be more profitable, and they may even do more drilling. If you ask oil companies about doing more drilling, though, they're going to want to see, a consistent rise in oil prices from where they were before the buildup for the war, and they're going to want to believe that that's going to be persistent for a fairly long time. So they're not sitting there waiting for oil to go over $70 a barrel, and then they're going to start drilling or whatever. They're going to make a reasoned careful judgment that we're going to have higher oil prices for an extended period, meaningfully higher. So I wouldn't say there's much of that happening. Not much will be happening now, but some of that could happen over time if you see that. But so the net of the oil shock will still be some downward pressure on spending and employment and upward pressure on inflation, of course.
And if I could just follow up on Colby's question, how much do you worry that, having looked through tariff inflation and inflation running above target, and looking through the oil price shock, would undermine the credibility of your commitment to the 2% target?
We have to do our analysis and think these things through carefully. But of course, that's on everyone's mind. We're well aware of the history, but you don't want to overreact to that. You want to make the best judgment you can based on the facts. I don't think we're going to let it color our decision making more than is appropriate. It's more the thought that it's been 5 years, and we've actually had we had the tariff shock, we had the pandemic, and now we have an energy shock of some size and duration. We don't know what that's going to be, actually. And, it's one of those things where it's a repeated set of things, and you worry that that's the kind of thing that can cause trouble for inflation expectations. And so we worry a lot about that, and we are very strongly committed to doing what it takes to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%. And, I think it's important that we do that. Very important.
Nick.
Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, you've described monetary policy as modestly restrictive. If the unemployment rate is roughly stable, inflation moving sideways in the high twos, with an ongoing overshoot in services and non-housing services, not just goods, and the economy doing fairly well, as you just outlined, what gives you confidence that inflation returns to target over the next couple of years?
Okay. So I would say the rate is, you can characterize it as in the high end of neutral, or you can characterize it as perhaps mildly restrictive, even modestly restrictive. No one knows for sure, but it's in that range where it's somewhere around the borderline between restrictive and not. Remember that a big part of the disinflation we're looking for is just the runoff of when tariffs are put into place. Of course, what they do is they raise prices to some extent, to the extent those prices the tariffs are paid by consumers on a one-time basis. And we're waiting for that process. It takes 8, 9, 10, 11 months, a year to go through the system. And we're waiting for the tariffs, which were put in place over the course of the middle part and later last year. We're waiting for that to go through the system so that goods inflation will return closer to what it's always been. I mean, it used to be, for many, many years, it was negative. And then, the year before tariffs came in, it was 0. And it's running at like 2% now. So, so that's kind of, goods inflation is running at 2%. So that's not coming from standard Phillips curve restrictive policy. It's coming from the runoff of a one-time thing. We also think it's important, though, to keep policy either mildly restrictive or close to that, but not too restrictive because of the weakness in the downside risk in the labor market. We are balancing these two goals in a situation where the risks to the labor market are to the downside, which would call for lower rates, and the risks to inflation are to the upside, which would call for higher rates or not cutting anyway. So we're in a difficult situation, and we feel like our framework calls on us to balance the risks, and we feel like where we are now, which is kind of on that borderline, the higher borderline of restrictive versus not restrictive, we feel like that's the right place to be.
Can I ask about core non-housing services, though? Because there are some people who think that it hasn't come down very much, if at all, over the past year. If wage growth has come down, if the labor market has loosened, why has non-housing services inflation maybe been slower to follow?
That's a good question. It's frustrating. Non-housing services they basically moved sideways for a year. They're at the same level, and we do expect that they will come down. But it's a bunch of idiosyncratic things. But at the same time, that is one of the things we should be seeing, because to your point, the labor market is clearly not a source of inflationary pressures, and that should really matter for non-housing services. But we're not seeing progress there. So we do, what we expect for next year is continued, what we want to see for this year rather, is continued progress on housing services, finally seeing that, the goods inflation come back down because the one-time effects of tariffs are through, and then also get some help from non-housing services. That's what we'd like to see. But it's a good question why we didn't see much of that last year.
Edward.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. So in December, we saw employment numbers revised down to negative 17,000. January revised down. February posted a loss of 92,000. Is the employment side a far greater risk than the inflation side? Because we are seeing inflation, CPI is close to 2%. PCE has ticked down overall.
It's really, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that that's clear at all, that one is more at risk than the other. So you can point to the unemployment rate being stable, and in a world where both supply and demand for workers have come down very, very sharply over the course of the past year due to immigration policy largely, a ratio is going to be a better thing to look at than job creation, for example. So, and the ratio is the unemployment rate, and it's been stable since September. So that tells you that. Inflation, you can. We're at 3.0% core inflation, 2.8% headline. So we've been well above the 2%, that amount, whatever it is, 0.7, 0.8, or a full percentage point above 2% for some time. And that's a concern. We need to get back down to 2%, and we need to keep focused on that, even though we do now face some new inflation from energy. So I'd be hard-pressed to say that one of them is obviously more at risk than the other.
And if I may, what happens if there's no Federal Reserve chairman confirmed on May 15th? Would you stay on?
So if my successor is not confirmed by the end of my term as chair, I would serve as chair pro tem until he is confirmed. That is what the law calls for. That's what we've done on several occasions, including involving me, and it's what we're going to do in this situation. And while I'm at it, on the question whether I will leave while the investigation is ongoing, I have no intention of leaving the board until the investigation is well and truly over, with transparency and finality. And I would refer you to the statement that was in the Fed's brief that you all have seen, and I won't have anything more for you on that. On the question of whether I will then continue to serve as a governor after my term ends and after the investigation is over, I have not made that decision yet. And I will make that decision based on what I think is best for the institution and for the people we serve. Figuring you probably were going to set the dominoes off there, Edward. And I'm not going to have any more to say on those issues, by the way.
Thank you very much. Claire Jones from the Financial Times. People have drawn quite a few historical parallels with the current situation. We've seen oil price shocks in the past. Some people have said the first Gulf War and the Fed's response to that, where there was a focus on the growth risks, is the right parallel. To what extent would you agree with that, and to what extent would you think we're in a different place today? Thank you.
It's really hard to say until we see the situation, the actual situation. In some circumstances, that might be the right case. In fact, for example, if we do see the kinds of disinflationary progress that we expect to see due to tariffs that I mentioned, I think it's hard to say, and it will depend to some extent on the size and duration of the effects we're seeing on prices, and it will depend a lot on what we can see in inflation expectations.
And just one follow-up, if I may, just on the BLS report that was mentioned briefly there. It doesn't seem from the projections or from the comments you've made today about the unemployment rate and focusing on that your view on the labour market story, to a large part being a supply-side story, has changed despite the quite negative number in February. Would that be the right take, and was there anyone else in the room who thought differently, and that the February jobs report was cause for concern?
So I think you have to take the two together. In a way, the January report was a positive surprise, and the February report was a negative surprise. If you put them together, you get something in the middle, and I think you have to really, as you do, I'm sure, realize there was a strike and there was weather, and that's about 80,000 of the negative effect total on the February report. Notwithstanding that, so what do you see if you take a step back overall? There are a number of indicators that suggest a degree of stability, but the thing that I think good number of people on the committee are concerned about is just the very, very low level of job creation. If you adjust what has been the trend job creation over the past, let's say, 6 months, if you adjust that for what we think, our staff thinks, is the overstatement due to overcounting, effectively there's zero net job creation in the private sector. But actually that looks like that's about what the economy needs in terms of dealing with very, very low, non-existent really, growth in the labor force, which of course we've never had in our history. So you've got a sort of a zero employment growth equilibrium. Now that's balance, okay, but I would say it does have a feel of downside risk, and it's not kind of a really comfortable balance. So we look at that, we see it, we get it, and I mean everybody understands the arithmetic, and that's you can say the break even is zero, but nonetheless it's something we're watching carefully, and so and are concerned about. But ultimately, though, you can argue that it's a consequence of deliberate policy, which is really the changes to immigration. That's the biggest factor there, and but nonetheless something we watch carefully.
Thanks, Chair Powell. The economy's experienced a series of supply shocks in the last few years, COVID, tariffs, 2 oil price shocks. Do you think that is bad luck, or has something changed in the world that makes supply shocks more common, and does the central bank need to start taking account of the risk of supply shocks as a more common problem?
We did go through a long period where the shocks were all demand shocks, and so we've had a lot of practice thinking about supply shocks in the last 4 or 5 years for sure. And it's just a very different thing, and a much more difficult thing, because it does immediately raise the question of tension between the two parts of our mandate. But has the world changed? I mean, COVID is a one-time thing, right? This energy supply shock is a one-time thing. It's not because of some broad tendency or anything, I don't think. And the oil shock with Ukraine was also a consequence of military action. So I don't know that the world has changed in a way that there'll be more supply shocks. But there's people have written that paper and that speech a number of times. A number of people have tried to make the case that is the case. And in fact, we have seen more supply shocks in the last 5 years than we've seen in many years before that. It's a fact.
Okay. You said last year that the Fed was reviewing its communication strategies, including the SEP, as part of its framework review. Whatever happened to that? And I have like 5 follow-ups to that, but I guess what would you change about Fed communications if you had the time? Thanks.
What happened about that was not much, and I'll tell you why. So, we looked carefully at many aspects of the SEP and of our communications, and there weren't any ideas that had very broad support on the committee. And you don't want to make a change to your communications unless you have the committee behind that. So we didn't really make any changes on that. I had hoped that they had some things that I wanted to do, but they didn't attract broad support, and we'd already made all the changes we made to the framework. That was a critical thing. So we didn't. And I wish we had been able to do some things, but we didn't. So maybe the next chair will take a look. I'm sure he will.
Okay, we've been listening in there to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, as he has been giving new information about interest rates for today moving forward here. So the board has decided to keep interest rates steady. This is despite more pressure from President Trump. They are keeping the rate steady at 3.5 to 3.75%. He talked about oil prices going up as the labor market is losing steam. And he signaled that there possibly may be one cut this year. We were thinking 2, but he said there may be one cut this year. But really talking about the economic implications from the war in Iran right now, the conflict overseas, the geopolitical issues there, and how that makes the outlook uncertain. Now, anytime, we were just having the conversation with the head of BMO, Commercial Bank US, right before we went to Jerome Powell. And so if you heard one through line there, it's uncertainty. And anytime you hear the word uncertain coming from the Fed chair, let's just take a look at what the market is doing right now. Look at that. I mean, it is not a good picture. We have been going steadily downhill today, looking at the Dow Jones being down almost 660 points at this point in time. So, of course, when you think about them holding the interest rate steady at 3.5 to 3.75%, keep in mind the goal is 2%. So we are still above the goal, okay? We still have not made it to the goal here. He talked about wanting to get to maximum employment and low, stable inflation. We still have not gotten to the target level yet. He said that they anticipate GDP being at about 2.4% next year, and that talk more about the decline in the labor force and inflation, that it's eased from 2022, but still not where they want it to be. And then talked about what they call shocks to the system, okay? The supply disruptions in the Middle East, talking about the Strait of Hormuz and the instability that creates, the higher energy prices that come from that. The international prices for oil, in fact, were above $109 per barrel today. Today, $98 per barrel for the U.S. So if you think about the many different implications that come from those things, when you look at the supply chain, of course, it's not just the oil getting to different places. It's all right, well, what does that mean for the person who has to pick something up, for the driver who has to put in diesel fuel into their vehicle to get you the goods that go on your table, all of those things, and how that price then gets passed off there. So he talked about the shocks that interrupt the progress here. Other shocks to the system go well beyond the war in Iran, and he talked about tariffs and immigration restrictions even. So all of those things factoring into, again, them keeping the interest rate steady. Now, as he's speaking, there's still this like elephant in the room that was then addressed, and that's what even happens to him moving forward, to Jerome Powell moving forward. He is in a cloud of uncertainty in and of himself. So this will be his second to last meeting as chair, possibly. Predictably, it would be his second to last meeting as chair. His term ends May 15th, and President Trump has already named a possible successor. That's economist Kevin Warsh, who is a former Fed governor, who was named by President Trump but faces his own Senate confirmation. And there are Republicans even on the Hill that are upset about the investigation going on right now from the DOJ into the Fed chair. Okay, if you're following all of that, they are upset about the investigation going on into Fed Chair Jerome Powell by the DOJ, and have said they will hold up that confirmation until that investigation gets dropped. So he said that if there is no one confirmed by May 15th when his term ends, he would then continue on as the Fed chair, as the chair pro tem, until someone is named. And he says he will be staying on the board until the investigation ends, and he's not sure what he will do after that, because even after his time as the Fed chair would possibly end May 15th, he would still be eligible to stay on the board, I believe, until 2027 or 2028. So there's a lot there. Again, big headline, he's keeping the interest rates steady, 3.5 to 3.75%, but there's still that elephant in the room as to what happens to Fed Chair Jerome Powell by May, and especially after May, and that there's still a big question mark on that. It is 2:03 right now, though. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll be back. Our next guest is already on the line. I'll set you up for where we're going from here. welcome back, everyone. It is 2:05 right now. Just to kind of set you up from where we're going from here in this hour. Before we turn to the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to talk with our friends in Lake County about a big recycling initiative that they are in the midst of right now, that they've just announced. Also, we're going to talk, listen, there will be a lot of sports betting happening between now and April, and well into April, and March Madness, it's just kind of synonymous with it. But how each state looks at sports betting is very different, and Wisconsin just set some new rules. And so we're going to talk with the folks in Wisconsin from our sister station about new laws that just went into effect there, and then also with the head of Kalshi about their billion dollar award for someone who has a perfect bracket. Statistically, it's really hard to have a perfect bracket during March Madness, but maybe someone will, and they might end up being a millionaire. So we're going to talk about all of those things. But first, we were just speaking about Lollapalooza yesterday. The names of the headliners dropped, and the excitement builds, and really we're just waiting on the weather to actually kind of team up with that announcement. Some particular year, but it was snowing yesterday in the midst of it all. That doesn't stop us, though, from anticipating better days ahead. And so I'm super excited to have one of the most recognizable names in house music who is joining me right now, Chicago native, John Summit, superstar DJ, Naperville native. And how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me. This is very exciting for me.
I didn't say it the way you typically say it to a crowd, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that on the air right now, but yeah, you did pretty good.
Yeah, we can't really say it the full way, but I gave you the G-rated version of that. Just tell me about being a part of Lolla this year, how that feels.
I mean, it's the best feeling ever. Lollapalooza was the first festival I actually ever went to in 2011 and made me fall in love with electronic music. I remember taking the train up from Naperville with all my high school buddies and had no idea what to expect. And when I saw that and went to the Perry stage and was really experiencing electronic music for the first time, I fell in love immediately. And yeah, I guess 15 years later, I'm headlining the festival, which is crazy to me because I wasn't even playing music then too, so.
It's crazy, but at the same time, I mean, you've been working towards this.
Oh yeah. It's been a grind to say the least. I mean, I got my start really playing clubs throughout Chicago in 2016 through 2020. And then when things slowed down, of course, through COVID, that's when I really locked in my music production and kind of really built a following. Then coming out of that, I played Lollapalooza for the first time in 2022. And that was the biggest moment ever in my career then because all my friends and family showed up. And even then, I would have no idea that I would headline it a few years later. So this has been just a wild ride for me.
Man, and what are your friends and family members saying?
They can't believe it just as much as me. But they're the best supporters, the friends, family, everyone. They go out to all the shows, and it's just really a big celebration whenever I play. And it's because I don't get to see them too much because I'm constantly on a world tour. So it's really fun for me to come back to Chicago where it all began.
Yeah, speaking of the world tour, where are you sitting right now? We're looking out the window like, oh, where is that?
I'm in Vail, Colorado. I have my own record label, Experts Only, where we throw a bunch of ski events. We were in Whistler yesterday, and I did about like 6 sets out there. So, yeah, and then after Vail, going to Miami for Ultra. So, yeah, it doesn't really stop.
Cool. Now, I need to know how you go about putting together a set. Like, what goes through your mind? How much time does it take? What is it like?
Well, so I'm coming out with a new album this year. That's coming out April 15th, and that took me about 3 months to produce it, which is faster than normal. Yeah, I had to take some time off touring, of course, to get that done. But then from there, I have my own record label, and I listen to about 100 demos a day, trying to find the new up-and-comer, because if it wasn't for artist-led labels, I wouldn't have had a platform myself, so I try to put on other people. So if any kid in Chicago here makes music and is listening, send it to me, and I'll give it a listen.
Oh, listen, we're going to put that online, and you're going to get, you are going to get inundated, but it's a wonderful thing to have that full circle moment where you can help other people from where you're from.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. I mean, a lot of Chicago legends like Green Velvet, Gene Ferris, Lee Foss, those are, DJs in the house and techno scene that really put me on to begin with and gave me a platform, because I originally was just releasing music on SoundCloud in my college dorm, did not expect anyone to listen to it. And then you see some DJs start playing it out. And before you know it, you start getting booked, and then go from 100-person clubs to now 100,000-person festivals. So it's been wild.
And when you are watching a crowd, how do you know if it's hitting or not? Like, I mean, at what point in time are you like, yep, I got him?
You can tell. I mean, especially Lollapalooza, the crowd energy is insane. Everyone's jumping up and down. But for me, I try to find the one person at the beginning of the set that's like not really having a good time. And my only goal and objective is to get them moving. And so once they're moving, I'm like, yes. So, because the main crowd is pretty easy to get them moving, but you got to get the skeptics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now when you were a kid, and I assume were your parents like really big into music? Like, what even got you really invested in music?
I mean, they really loved rock music, so we were always listening to that growing up. And then in high school, I kind of just really went down like the indie route and would go to Pitchfork every year and kind of just did a bunch of internet digging, because I'm just a super introverted kid and was all on all the music forums and everything. So I think being a good DJ is about being a good sound selector first, and then you figure out the music production afterwards. So then I learned how to make music on YouTube all throughout college, because I was trying to put off my accounting studying, because I studied accounting, got my CPA and all of that, but the studying was really rough. So I kind of slacked off a little bit at points to make music, but it all worked out in the end, I think.
It all worked out in the end. And, I'm sure that CPA, certification actually goes a long way when you start to make some money.
Oh yeah. I mean, you hear the horror stories all the time about artists who are super successful, and then they find out years later they don't have any money and stuff like that. So having my auditing skills does help, and yeah, it helps the business in the long run. So it's good to have both sides of my brain working, because when you do too much business, you want to be creative, but I think when you do too much creative, you kind of want to get over to business. So I like it all, to be honest.
And you mentioned being an introvert. How in the world does that work with what you do?
Well, for years I had to fake it till I make it on stage, because I do have my real name is John Schuster. John Summit's my stage name, and I really have to put myself in like a persona, I guess, to be able to entertain and talk, because I have a hard time doing public speaking in front of 10 people, let alone 100,000. So, I mean, the first time I ever went on the mic was only a few years ago, and I super screwed it up, which is how I got my go-to saying. And it was at like 4 a.m. in Miami. I stumbled upon every single word. And so I think it's like the 10,000 hour rule, right? That the more you put yourself out there, the more you get comfortable. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure kind of the same thing for you, where I'm guessing you were pretty nervous the first day on air, right?
Oh, absolutely. A leaf blew and hit me in the face right in the middle of a live shot.
See, and then you knew that was like the lowest point. It can only get better from there, right?
Right.
I love that.
You have a wonderful spirit, and I'm sure your parents are so proud of you, your whole community, so proud of you. And when you get out there at Lolla, I mean, how many people are like, hey, can I get in the VIP with you when you're coming back to a home area?
That probably gives me more stress, my guest list request, than the actual show itself. But thankfully, most people know I'm not really on my phone too much nowadays with that kind of stuff, because it kind of takes you out of it a little bit. So I think most people understand.
Does it make you emotional?
Oh yeah, I'll shed a tear or two on stage, like 100%, especially towards the end once I realize it's all come together. But right now, just all the anxiety and nerves, and it's 4 months out and I'm already thinking about it. So,
well, listen, I mean, when you get up there, we're going to feel a different sense of pride now that you're a friend of Chicago Live. And, don't get so big that you never come back on the show, okay?
Oh, no, I have to. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it.
Okay, now before I let you go, I did the G-rated attempt, and I'm going to need you to edit yourself a bit. But give me the basic overview of your greeting to the crowds.
Chicago, how we feeling, baby?
Thank you. I get to keep my
job. It was
job.
weird making that G-rated. That did not feel comfortable, but I think I nailed it, right?
Yeah, I get to keep my job. That's the most important thing. And we so support you.
Awesome.
Keep doing wonderful things, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Great chatting with you. Oh, my goodness. 2:15, everyone. A wonderful moment to smile and support someone again who is from Naperville and doing fantastic things. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. 2:17 right now. Are you ready for the madness of March? Basketball, yeah. The play-ins are already happening, and of course, the big stuff gets ready on Thursday. So, will anyone have a perfect bracket when it's done? That person might end up becoming a billionaire. Want to bring in Adam Barrick, the head of sports partnerships for Kalshi, to talk a little bit about what's being offered. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, Anita, how are you?
I'm doing well. I could be, doing much better with $1 billion. Tell me a little bit about this contest.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to take a step back, I'll give you a bit of background on Kalshi. We're a prediction markets platform, and essentially what prediction markets are, they are a financial, mechanism in which you can essentially get a yes or no outcome on a question that you have a, passion or interest in. And, we're federally regulated at the CFTC level. We've been around for 4+ years, and we offer a plethora of event contracts across news, politics, technology, sports, pop culture, weather, and obviously March Madness as well. So really excited to dive into this space. As it relates to our March Madness bracket challenge for this year, we really see March Madness as a cultural event. Yes, it's rooted in sports, obviously the NCAA basketball, but it really, it draws the attention of passive fans who are into March Madness, given their school could be potentially participating, given they could have a potential affinity regionally for a school that's in there. So we really see it as a big opportunity. As we think about our March Madness bracket, basically pretty straightforward. Someone gets a perfect bracket, they get $1 million. And I think from our perspective, it creates the thought of probability, and it's educating folks on what our product is, but also sort of how events contracts involve probability. If you were to look at every single NCAA event just from a pure 50-50 odds basis coin flip, the odds of getting a perfect bracket would be 1 in 9.2 quintillion. So the odds in that perspective are low. It's a little higher. It's about 1 in 120 million if you add in sort of the odds factor to each game. But no one's ever achieved this. Warren Buffett really made it popular about 12 years ago in 2014 by being the first one to offer a large prize for a perfect predicted bracket, which hasn't happened. But we're excited about it. We're obviously leaning into it in a big way. Even if no one picks the perfect bracket, the highest the highest scorer as part of this promotion for us will get $1 million, and we're also donating $1 million to charity as well. So again, something we're really, really excited about, leaning into a big way, and excited to tell you more.
This is huge. And this is one of those where you go back to the movies and you say so you're saying there's a chance. There's a chance, everybody.
Channeling Chris Farley.
All right. Is this the first time you all have done this?
It has. It is. Yeah. Yes. It's the first time we're really leaning in this manner. I think from our perspective too, there's this element of, hey, a person who gets a perfect bracket can obviously win $1 billion. I think from our perspective, a lot of people come to our platform just to look at the sort of probability and the odds that are on our platform. Almost 70% of the people who come to our platform come to us for that purpose. They don't even engage with a market-based or contract-based behavior on our platform, right? So I think while it's the first time we're doing it, it's an area. These big cultural moments are areas that we obviously there's a lot of consumer demand and interest in those, and they're going to be areas that we continue to lean into, whether it's culture, whether it's entertainment around the Oscars, sports, politics, news. We're really a multi-genre product and business, and this is going to be, cultural moments like this are going to be areas we just lean into in a big way for the foreseeable future.
Okay, explain how this works. How does somebody participate?
Yeah, so in order to participate, have to be 18 and older. You come to our platform, you sign up, you fill out your bracket, and you kind of watch the games and follow along. So it's pretty straightforward. Come to our app, or you go to kalshi.com/billion-dollar-bracket, and you can join in the fun. It's pretty straightforward. Our product team has done a great job making it a very, very seamless, simple experience, whether you're an avid college basketball fan or whether you're a very passive fan and just want to have your chance at $1 billion.
And it's free to enter?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, you mentioned the fact that you all are also going to be giving to charity $1 million to 2 nonprofits. What are those nonprofits?
Yep. So we're giving $500,000 to iMentor, which is an organization that focuses on first-generation Americans and giving them the background around financial literacy and giving them those skills to kind of lean into those fields and areas. And then the second charity, we're working with Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns on this bracket challenge, and we're giving $500,000 to his charity in Arizona, which supports underserved youth and a number of youth-centric organizations in the Phoenix area.
Now, I think we've covered a lot in terms of the contest in your company. So I think the most important things we have covered here. Now I need to know, when you work in this kind of arena, do you watch and enjoy the games the way other people do?
It's funny you ask that. I by and large, am a large sports fan, so I follow them as sort of an organic passion that I have. It is fun watching games and watching our product, sort of the probabilities fluctuate real time. Because what we have seen, not just in sports, but we saw this last week too with the Oscars, where for a very long time, Timothée Chalamet was the favorite for the Best Actor award. Michael B. Jordan overtook him with our probabilities, and our users were obviously conveying their sentiment with what they thought the outcome would be. And lo and behold, Michael B. Jordan wins the Oscars, right? So I think when I follow these sorts of events now, whether it's sports or culture, entertainment oriented, it is very interesting to follow along the sentiment of the users on our platform, because the success rate that our users have in sort of predicting outcomes is very, very high. So if you have a differing opinion on whether it's a live sporting event or a live culture event, or what's going to be the most downloaded song on Spotify in a particular month, if you feel like that viewpoint is going to be the outcome, and you want to put your money where your mouth is, we're the platform to do that with.
I hear you all were following along with our elections in the state of Illinois last night. What were those predictions like? Yeah,
I would say that the primary, the predictions that we had around your guys' primary, high success or high degree of success in predicting those. I actually don't have offhand the final percentage in terms of what our users predicted correctly, but can tell you that generally falls in the 70 to 80% range, depending on the event. There's obviously major upsets. I think the bigger one that your viewers may be interested in is we have a number of markets for rain or snow in the Chicago area for this month. So hopefully folks are engaging accordingly based on what they want the outcome to be around precipitation.
Wait, and another big one I'm hearing that you all are following is whether the Bears are staying or leaving Illinois.
We have that one at about 68% that they're going to stay. So I think while they may not be staying at Soldier Field, they'll be staying in the state of Illinois, which should give your viewers who are Bears fans some ease.
It's kind of the compromise of it all. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure people will be really taking part in this contest during March Madness, as it's just taking part in all the different things connected to March Madness seem to only hyping up the excitement around the games. So thank you once again for taking some time to chat with us about it and share more about the rules and how people can be a part.
Thank you, Anita. It was great joining.
Absolutely. And if you get a billionaire out there and they came from Chicago, you remind them where they got the news. I'm playing.
You'll have to split it with them.
All right, you take care, everybody. It is 2:28. Let's get in a 2-minute break. All right, 2:30, everyone. We were just having a conversation about the contest from Kalshi for a perfect bracket during March Madness and the $1 billion on the line. And we're going to stay kind of in that same vein of sports betting. And so let's go ahead and bring in Jason Calvi from our sister station in Milwaukee, because the Wisconsin Senate just approved a legalization bill. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to be with you today. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. So this is about online sports betting. Tell me about the process to get to this point.
Well, it might be surprising for our audience in Chicago listening to this and finding out that Wisconsin does not allow online sports betting. It's very popular in the state of Illinois, our neighboring state, but here in Wisconsin, state law does not allow that right now. This has been a long process to try to open the door to online sports betting here in Wisconsin, and the Assembly really had some very detailed and really intense debates, and the state Senate did as well. And just yesterday, they were able to pass that through the state Senate. So now it goes to the governor's desk. He's likely to get it about April 2nd when they send him a big batch of bills from the legislative session. But the big question right now is whether our Democratic Governor Tony Evers is going to sign this bill or not. I spoke with him this morning, and he still was unable to commit yes or no to signing this. He says he wants to make sure all of the tribes in Wisconsin are on board with this piece of legislation and what it allows.
Oh, and talk a little bit more about that. When you said the tribe, so this has to do with Indian property, Native American property?
Yeah, so right now in Wisconsin, betting is not allowed except at Indian property, Native American tribe property. So we have 11 tribes in the state of Wisconsin, and there's some big casinos, for example, the one in the Milwaukee area, which your audience may see some of the ads playing or the billboards, is for Potawatomi. It's right over the border. It's in the city of Milwaukee. And that one actually has an in-person sports book. So you can place a bet in Wisconsin at a place like Potawatomi. But the key is it has to be in person. In Illinois, you can have your DraftKings or your FanDuel. You can place the bet online in the state of Illinois. Here in Wisconsin, you can place a bet on sports only at a casino. And so right now, that is part of the debate is this particular piece of legislation that the governor is going to have to decide whether to sign or veto.
So what was the argument against this for it to, take an extended period of time?
Yeah. I think the debate for some people, there's many different arguments for and against, and it really split the parties. So you had some Democrats voting for it, you had some Democrats voting against it, you had some Republicans voting for it, you had some Republicans voting against it. So it was not a party line vote, which we often see in Wisconsin. It was a split vote between the various parties. So what the debate was some of the people against this bill. They brought up the fact that they were worried that the convenience of having a sports book right in the palm of your hand means that you can bet anytime, anywhere. And they thought that would lead to more problem gambling. They were worried about people potentially going into debt, racking up major bills, having to go into potential debt moving forward if gambling was more accessible in the palm of your hand. So that's what the people against this measure brought up in the debate at the Senate yesterday. Those who were in support of it said that the Native American tribes themselves have been asking for this as a way to help bring income into the tribes and to help their people who might be struggling as well. And so they said this would be a good thing. The tribes have requested it. And so they're saying if the tribes are requesting it, they're a sovereign tribe, let them have that access to online sports betting in Wisconsin. So we'll see what the governor decides. Again, when I talked with him this morning, he said he really wanted to make sure all the tribes were on board. There are 11 tribes in the state of Wisconsin, and I believe right now about 5 of them have potentially the right to have in-person sports betting. But this is still a long way to go. Even if the governor signs this particular piece of legislation, it's not just instantly you'll be able to do your sports betting on your phone. There still has to be negotiations between the state and each of the tribes. So they have what's called a compact. It's a really formal, it's not just a contract. It's like a treaty between these tribes and the state. It's called a compact. And in order to then allow for online sports betting, if the governor signs this particular law, this particular bill, then what would happen is they would renegotiate the compact to say, okay, we're going to allow online sports betting in your compact. And then that's not just the end of the story. Then it goes to the federal government. So then the Trump administration would have the final sign off on whether to change to allow that amendment to this very serious document called the compact, which again is that treaty between state and tribe.
Yeah, and so that treaty with the state and the tribe really well beyond this issue of sports betting. Does that kind of dictate, business, how businesses engage with tribes moving forward in the state? I mean, how long has this been around, and is that essentially like the workup for, essentially like the Constitution between the state and the tribes?
Yeah, it really is that treaty, that constitution that lays out the parameters of the relationship between the tribe, which is a sovereign tribe, federally recognized sovereign tribe, and the state of Wisconsin. And so every time a tribe, and again, there's 11 of them in Wisconsin, and anytime they want to do something like set up a casino, then that needs to be renegotiated with the compact with the state, and then it goes to the federal government. So right now there's actually discussion of having a new casino closer to you guys down in the Kenosha area, and there's been discussion about that. That's actually now gone to the federal government, where they're weighing the environmental aspects of that, and people, including your audience listening in Chicago and Illinois, is able to share their thoughts with the federal government right now. It's part of that open comment, public comment period, so people, if maybe they're against having another casino closer to the Wisconsin border in Kenosha, they can share their thoughts with the federal government as they then will be weighing whether or not to approve a new physical casino down on the border between Wisconsin and Illinois. So long process for approving these compacts and changing them and allowing for casinos. It goes to the federal government. They weigh the environmental aspects. They have to sign off on it, and then it comes back to the governor to start a new casino, and he would have the final say. So you may remember there was a discussion about having a new casino down in the Kenosha area several years ago. And at that time we had Republican Governor Scott Walker, and he, at the very last minute after it had been signed off by the federal government, he had the final say, and he said, no, we're not going to have another casino. So that's the whole process, the kind of complicated process to have a new casino. Yes, there are discussions about a new casino again in that Kenosha area. And then when it comes down to it, then they can also add these sports books, but that has to go through the negotiation process and the federal approval as well. So we'll see what happens with the tribes that right now don't have a sports book. There's, again, 11 tribes. I believe 5 of them have permission, that sign-off process from the state and feds, to have an in-person sports betting complex. And now the whole discussion for the governor, the debate for the governor, is whether to sign this brand new bill that just passed the legislature, which opens the door for potentially having those online sports betting.
And what do you think the timeline would be like from here?
Yeah, so all these bills that the legislature passed will go to the governor on April 2nd. So there's still some time for him to weigh this issue. He really said he wanted to have all of the tribes in Wisconsin on board. So there are meetings. I can tell you all of these Indian nations are having meetings amongst themselves to kind of talk about this particular proposal, to see if it's in the best interests of their members and of the tribes. And at the end of the day, I'm told by sources that none of the tribes are opposed to this bill, but they're just trying to learn more about exactly what it would allow and what that process would be moving forward. So April 2nd is going to be a key day. That's when these bills are going to be sent to the governor.
Okay, April 2nd. We'll be kind of circling back around to see what happens with it from there. Even though this is the thing that we kind of keyed in to talk to you about today, is this the big buzz in the legislature right now there in Milwaukee, or there in your state? Or is there something else that really a lot of people are talking about right now?
Yeah, there is so much going on. They really packed so much into their last day. Yesterday was the last day formally for this Wisconsin State Senate. So Anita, it took me 20 minutes to read through all of the bills that they had on their agenda yesterday. So of course I can't cover all, 100 or so bills that were debated.
We've got time, Jason. We've got time. No, I'm playing.
But it would have been great, But one of the, there's a bunch of other bills on the agenda yesterday. One of them is dealing, and one of the bills that the governor actually signed today regards postpartum care. So we're talking about mothers after they give birth to a child. In Wisconsin, we were one of the few states, just a couple of states in the entire country, that had that postpartum Medicaid program, just 2 months, 60 days. And we were only one of the few states that had it that few of months. Now today, the governor of Wisconsin, Governor Tony Evers, signs this bipartisan bill, which now expands that postpartum Medicaid coverage, not for 2 months as it was, but now for a whole year.
Wow.
So that was celebrated by both Democrats and Republicans today as the governor signed that particular piece of legislation. You know, we focus a lot on the debates between Republicans and Democrats, but this was one bill that at the end of the day, both parties had supported.
Yeah, you know, those are rare cases these days. And so it's a beautiful thing to see when everyone's kind of moving in the same direction on a particular issue. Man, this was a great conversation. Jason, thank you so much for filling us in on what's going on there in your state and in your city. And we've got a lot to kind of circle back on. Again, April 2nd, you said, for sports betting. And by then, of course, you know, March Madness will be in full swing. So I wonder if that'll add to the pressure.
Probably. And, you know, it's going to take a while. So even if the governor signs it after April 2nd, still a long way to go to renegotiate all those deals between the tribes and the state, and then it goes to the federal government. So we're not going to have sports betting anytime before the Final Four, that's for sure.
Everybody's just going to be looking over the state line like, really? Really?
Trust me, you can go over the state line and those apps will work just perfectly. So I know people that do that, they'll go over there, or they can bet in person. We've got Potawatomi, Oneida's up in Green Bay. There's places in Wisconsin where you can place those legal bets for sports, but they're all in person right now.
Okay. All right. We'll see if things change. Wonderful speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Anita. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. It's 2:42 right now, and we will circle back, kind of keep our eye on those to see what the latest developments are come April and moving forward. But let's get in a quick 2-minute break, everybody, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. Just about 2:45 right now, and we're getting the details on a major recycling initiative happening or just announced in Lake County. Walter Willis with Swalco is joining me right now to give us more information about what's going on and the impact that this could have for many years to come. Oh my goodness, Walter, I'm trying to focus on you, but what is that next to you?
Hello, Anita. This is my buddy Lou. He's the mascot for our Feed the Car program, and he's excited to be here.
I can tell. It's like he's frozen in time. Yeah. But anyway, tell us about this new initiative.
Yeah, this is part of a US EPA grant we received a couple years ago with the Metro Mayors Conference, our caucus, and really the purpose is to reinvigorate people about recycling. That recycling is real and recycling is important, and Loop is helping that with that education. And we do have a goal of increasing the amount of recycling that we do in the Chicagoland area. This is for Cook and the Collier counties. It's really the first big education campaign we've had for the whole Chicago metro region. We want to increase recycling by 15%. We're doing about 500,000 tons as a region right now of recycling, which is very significant, about 20% of what we generate. And we also want to cut down on contamination. We don't want to put the wrong things into Loop. We don't need food in there. We don't need clothing. We don't need things that shouldn't be in Loop.
Do you think that we are advanced enough in society? Like, it feels like we've talked about recycling for so long, but at the same time, when you put it the way that you just did, I'm like, the length of time we've been talking about recycling and yet we're still doing it wrong.
It's the products have gotten more complicated, or our packaging has gotten more complicated. But the good news is we're really starting to work with the brand owners and to try to make packaging that is easier to understand for people. But really the basics aren't that difficult. Paper, cardboard, the glass, the metals, aluminum. And it really gets complicated when we get to plastics. But really we'll take almost any plastic that's packaging as long as it's not styrofoam and you don't use plastic film or put it in a plastic bag. Those would be the big no-nos. No styrofoam and no plastic wrappers or bags or grocery sacks or anything like that.
So you increase education, but what else do you think will be a determinant in changing the statistics in years to come?
Well, we've hired a company, SCS Engineers, who did kind of a baseline analysis. All 275 municipalities reported their data with the help of their haulers on how much they're recycling now. We're running this program. You should have seen some billboards and a lot of placards on the Chicago transit system. Loop should have been out there. Hopefully people have recognized them. And then we're going to measure this again after we run this program all at 26. And then we'll look back in 2027 at the 26 data to see if between 2024, before we started, and then after the campaign, did we move the needle with the campaign. But any education to make things simpler, one source of information, no confusion as much as possible so that residents don't get frustrated.
How does Lake County compare to other counties in the state?
Well, I think, SWALCO is a unique agency. We work with all 43 municipalities in the county of Lake, so we all work together quite a bit. We like to think that we're the leaders in the state, but I think we're about 3 or 4 points higher than the average of 20%. So, it's good, but we could do better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good, but we can always do better. And what are some of the things that you would want everyday people to do a little differently?
Well, the number one thing, we've hired a local environmental firm. Frank Pettis is a gentleman that's been running that. We've been looking at people's carts in both Zion and Waukegan. We looked at over 1,500 homes for 4 straight weeks. The number one thing people are doing wrong is they bag their recyclables, which they shouldn't. They should stay loose in the cart. That's the number one problem that we have. But when we surveyed the material recovery facilities or the recycling plants, they're most concerned about lithium batteries. We did have one of our recycling plants burned down a few years ago in Plainfield. A significant cost to rebuild, $50 to $60 million for these plants or even more. They don't want any flammable containers, so none of the propane tanks or things like that shouldn't be in there. No medical waste or sharps. Tanglers like bags, film, garden hoses, clothing, and then food. Just common sense things that you really should not put in your recycling cart. It should be packaging, and stay away from styrofoam as far as plastics.
And how much of a difference will this make in the future?
Well, the Chicago region, we rely on a network of landfills throughout Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan that have about 10 years of capacity. So, and it's not easy to expand landfills anymore. So by at least 20%, we know that we can do at least 10 points better than that with a really aggressive recycling program. And then we know, obviously, that when we recycle metals and paper and glass, all those things, it's much more conservative, or saves a lot of resources as opposed to making those materials from virgin sources. So the energy savings are significant. And, we've got over 8 billion people on this planet. It's doubled in my lifetime since I was born in 1960. So we have to make sure that these materials get back into what we call the circular economy. We can use them over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that, especially in an area that's so densely populated, that people kind of overlook the little things that add up in the end that actually could make a difference?
I think that's what's great about recycling, is that every day you can make a choice to either put that container that you should know is recyclable or not, or go to some guidelines, into the recycling container versus the garbage. That's one little thing. You might think, well, what difference am I making? But when we multiply that times millions of people, it makes a significant difference. So to me, it's a way to feel good, to do the right thing. This stuff is getting recycled. We've done, I think we did a clip with Fox about 6 or 8 months ago, where we actually went to a recycling plant and showed people this is serious business. Once we get this material segregated, there are markets for it, and it does have value.
What do you say to people who are like, just throw it in the garbage?
Well, to be honest, I think you're being lazy, and it's not that hard because we've got access to recycling. Almost every single family home in Lake County has a curbside recycling cart. And really, if you think about it, we are one planet. It's planet Earth. And if we continue to grow as far as population, resource depletion will become an issue. Maybe not in my lifetime, but in my children's lifetime. So it's really very important that we get these materials back into a circular economy, and don't go having to mine for metals and cut down trees when we don't have to.
Walter, you took a minute there to breathe before you said they're just being lazy. So I could tell you were thinking of a way to say something nicely.
Well, yeah, I was.
But
on live TV. Yeah. My board wouldn't be happy with me if I said something I shouldn't. So.
What do you do, though? Be it what you do for a living. What do you do when you see people that aren't doing the right thing right in front of you?
Well, I've got family members that don't necessarily recycle the way I want to. So it's just a gentle reminder that, hey, this is important. It's not that hard to do. It does make a difference in the large scale. And, we got to take care of our planet, at the end of the day. That's why I dedicated my career to, the waste industry and recycling and getting things out of landfills.
Walter Willis, Walco Executive Director. Wonderful speaking with you and Lou right there. Does Lou speak back?
Well, he is a bit of a character, so keep an eye out for him.
Thank you so much for what you do on a regular basis. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Anita.
Okay, all right. And best of luck with the new grant and the recycling initiative moving forward. Yeah. All right, everyone, it's 2:55. Give us 2 minutes, and then I'll set you up for where we're going in our 3 o'clock hour. There's still plenty more Chicago Live to come. All right, everyone, just about 3 o'clock on your Wednesday afternoon. We were halfway through a very busy work week here, and we're taking a look at a few things as we go into our 3 o'clock hour, our final hour together here on Chicago Live. And so before we end the hour, we're going to bring up one of our meteorologists to talk about the weather conditions outside. It's been an okay day. You know, we did get the snow that Emily prepared us for, but as you take a look right outside of our studios here on Michigan Avenue, I mean, it's not the prettiest, but not the worst either. And it looks like things are maybe going in the right direction. Let's all hope so, that by the time we get to the weekend, they're talking about some 60s, even the possibility of 70s. I mean, there's some good stuff to come. So maybe more flights will be getting off the ground at O'Hare. You know, we've had some, oh, look at one coming right in as I speak. Maybe things will be going well there for the airport. We had so many flights that were canceled or delayed because of weather to start this week, and so we want them to be able to get back on track here for sure as we go into the weekend. We know a lot of people are eager for spring break travel and so much more, and so best wishes to you for your travels. There are multiple things that have been weighing on people who have been trying to travel over the last couple of weeks. We're also speaking about spring break, maybe around 3:15, 3:20 or so, we're going to talk about bed bugs and some spring break destinations. I'm going to try to get through that discussion, but just the thought of bed bugs kind of makes you like, oh, God, gross. But we need to know where they're showing up. Terminex is actually sending out this warning and letting us know about some of the places that we should all be aware of that are having some issues right now. We're also going to be talking with our own political reporter. We're hoping that Paris Schutz will join me in just a bit here so that we can talk about last night and into today. Election day yesterday. today wrapped up with quite an interesting evening. And Paris was going all night, going over the results and speaking to the analysts that he had on. Governor Pat Quinn joined him on the set. Jamal Green, who is a local entrepreneur who has run twice, I think, for mayor. He also had Monica Ng from Axios who was joining him as they were discussing the many different races, the implications, the winners, the losers, how this sets us up for the midterms coming up in November, now that we know the matchups and, of course, the dollars that went into the races and how much more money will be required to move things forward through the end of the year. It will be very interesting to see how the money flows, where it comes from, all of those things. And again, when we talk about the winners from last night, there is a big conversation over one winner in particular who was actually unopposed last night. Okay, there was no one running against Governor J.B. Pritzker last night, but he actually may have been the biggest winner of them all last night, because pretty much everyone that he put money into or put his name on ended up winning. And so if you think about the possibility of his future aspirations, you know where I'm going with that. It really looked like, he's running things here in the state in terms of Democrats. And so now that there's a matchup with him, a rematch, let me say, with him and Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey, what kind of money will go into that matchup? Well, will outside Republicans even pour money into that matchup when they've seen it before and seen the outcome? Or will they think that maybe this is the time when they could change the tide? We shall see. But Paris Schutz is actually sitting down with Governor Pritzker today, and so that's why, we anticipate him being up here, but it's kind of a sliding scale because he was set to interview Governor J.B. Pritzker and talk about the night that was, the matchup that is set, and again, the money that all of this is requiring, along with his future aspirations. And I don't know how much he'll say about that. He's been a little tight-lipped about that. It's been more so all of the politicos who have been talking about that. But when you see a night like last night, that conversation just grows. Clearly his influence is here in the state, but then there's a greater conversation as to, will he have an influence across the country? Can he build something across the country? All of those questions are in play today. And again, there are so many other races that we were watching last night that Paris will be breaking down that were of interest moving forward. Some people who, the primary really was their primary interest because they don't have another race moving forward in November, and others who have a matchup in November that now they turn their attention toward. So again, we look to have Paris up here at any point in time, but we're also watching, and in our last hour we heard from, in our first hour, we heard from the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. They have decided to keep the interest rate steady moving forward. This is supposed to be his second to last meeting of the year as the Fed chair, and they decided to keep the rates steady. I'm sure that President Trump will not be happy with that, but there was a pretty lengthy explanation as to why they were doing what they were doing. But look at how the market closed for today on the heels of that announcement. It was not a good day, and things just continue to go downhill. Now, there's a lot weighing on this. Jerome Powell talked about oil prices going up, a labor market that's losing steam. He said possibly there will be a rate cut sometime this year, but they're just not there yet as a body. Now, the one governor who was put on the board by President Trump actually voted for a rate cut, a 0.25% rate cut. But as a body, they did not have enough votes for that to happen. So as a body, they are keeping the interest rate steady at 3.5% to 3.75%. And the goal is always 2%. So if you look here, how the market closed for the day, the Dow Jones was down almost 770 points here. The S&P 500 fell 1.2% today. The NASDAQ dropped 1.3%. And a lot of this had to do with the forecast coming from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He said that the progress that they're trying to make in terms of inflation just keeps getting what he called shocks to the system. A shock to the system would be the war in Iran and the geopolitical interests that play on everything there, whether it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, the oil production, the movement of oil. 20% of the world's oil supply goes through that one strait, and it's supposed to go through that one strait, but that's not happening right now. So the oil prices that are ticking up, international oil prices were above $109 a barrel today, $98 for the U.S. oil. Okay, so that is a shock to the system when they're trying to get back to that 2% goal here. Other shocks that he talked about that interrupt progress, as he said, tariffs and immigration restrictions. Those things factored in as well. So when he talked about higher energy prices that push up overall inflation, all of those things weighed heavily on what we were seeing there for the stock market, what we're seeing with the interest rates holding steady, and the word of the day seems to be uncertainty, as we just do not know where we are going, what the fallout really will be from this war in Iran, because there are so many different implications. As you can see here right on your screen, the stairwell being mobilized to get up to Air Force One. Not quite sure where the president has flown into or out of there, but you can see this is a picture here before he gets off of the plane. I'm trying to kind of see what his schedule was for today as we're looking at this picture here as they get ready for him to get off of the plane here. Yesterday he spent the day in a lot of different policy meetings with several world leaders. One that was from Ireland. In fact, of course, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, but kind of looking at things here today in terms of where he was supposed to be. And let's see. Okay, he's at Dover Air Base. The president this morning was departing Miami en route to Dover. And let's see, he was supposed to be going to a White House press pool at some point in time. He'll be at the Capitol as well a little bit later on, kind of looking over his schedule. He's going to be participating in a Shamrock Bowl presentation in the East Room in a couple of hours here. So that's kind of what they're getting ready for. And then Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, is going to be briefing reporters a little bit later on as well. So just kind of looking over where he was anticipated today and what the schedule was for the day. And again, this is at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where we were waiting on the president to disembark from Air Force One. But again, he's got a lot of things that are weighing on him, a lot of different conversations that are being had, particularly about the war in Iran and its many different implications on both the economy here and abroad, and how to exit that conflict at some point in time, when the exit will happen, and what that will take. There are many different questions that are being asked of him right now, and so the press will continue to press for those answers. But again, the Fed chair, that really is the big thing today. The Fed chair coming out, keeping the interest rates the same, and that is despite President Trump really putting a lot of pressure on him. Of course, he's sitting under a whole investigation right now. That even some Republicans have been very upset about, but a lot of pressure campaign on him, the Fed chair right now, to try to move these interest rates. But in the middle of a conflict in Iran, the uncertainty, again, word of the day, the uncertainty there is just not allowing them to budge on their interest rates. So again, this was the second to last meeting for the Fed chair today. He is expected to have his term end May 15th. There's President Trump right now leaving Air Force One. Again, there at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. You can see him. This morning he had an intelligence briefing, again, about what's going on in Iran and more. Still waiting on more information from that briefing. He had some time at Joint Base Andrews earlier. And I see here, let's see, it is, they are going to be participating there at Dover Air Force Base. Unfortunately, everybody, I'm getting this information. They are going to be participating in a dignified transfer ceremony. That looks to be the next thing on his agenda here before they go anywhere, is the dignified transfer ceremony. So I believe we are sitting at 13 now service members that we have lost in the war in Iran, and we watched the dignified transfer for the first 6. But there is another dignified transfer ceremony that is anticipated today. Our service members, of course, that sign up to go wherever and serve in whatever capacity, and have paid the ultimate sacrifice as a result there with this conflict of Operation Epic Fury. It is 3:12 right now, everyone. We never know when we take these live pictures exactly where we're going, exactly what is happening there, but that does look to be the next thing that is on the agenda for today, is a dignified transfer ceremony. If we do indeed see that moment, we will honor that moment and take you to it live, but that is what is anticipated after the president arrives there at Dover Air Force Base, that they will be participating in that. Let's get in a quick 2-minute break, everyone, and I'll let you know where we're going from here.
Today may seem more modern.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. It's 3:15 right now, and as I understand it, I should get a visit from our political reporter, Paris Schutz, any minute now that he is walking this way, so I don't want to get into another conversation before he walks into Studio 32 here. Obviously, we'll be talking about his interview that he just completed with Governor J.B. Pritzker coming off of last night's elections. Governor Pritzker, yes, he was on the ballot, but he was running unopposed. This was a primary night last night, but he also put in money into his lieutenant governor's campaign, Juliana Stratton, and she did indeed win. Come on in, Paris. I was just speaking about you. We've set up the seat for you. So he poured money into the campaign for his lieutenant governor, Juliana Stratton, who will now be the Democratic candidate for Senate. And then he also poured in money into the comptroller race as well for Croak.
Yeah, I mean, the big winner last night is Governor J.B. Pritzker, and it wasn't necessarily expected to be quite like that. But we say that because he made some bets on some big races, and he won all of them. And we talk about the big special interests that were involved here. They kind of had mixed results. APAC, AI, crypto, some of their people won, some of their people didn't. But with Pritzker, Stratton, the big one. And, you know, I just got back from talking to Governor Pritzker, and, you know, I asked him, I said, but, you know, is there kind of a dark cloud here when we talk about you bankrolled her campaign? A PAC that he's affiliated with donated about $12 million. And he said, well, it's true, but Raja Krishnamurthy outspent her 3 or 4 to 1. And so he said it's absolutely a concern of his about all of this outside campaign spending.
I think that's a concern about a lot of people.
Oh, it's a concern for a lot of people.
How much money is going into these races and where it's coming from.
So he said, I get it, but like, you know, look what she was up against, and she was still way outspent, and she still performed very well. I mean, this was a decisive victory. She won downstate, she won Cook County.
It was very interesting to look at the map and see her influence versus Raja Krishnamurthy, and just a small piece for Robin Kelly.
Yeah. Kelly was really kind of, you know, not in the mix there at the end. Krishnamurthy had, you know, as Governor Pritzker said, he's been waiting 10 years for this. He's been raising money for 10 years to do this. I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but Krishnamurthy, a very prolific fundraiser, he wanted this, clearly. He was waiting for Senator Durbin to maybe make this decision, and it just didn't work out, and he had more money, but money doesn't always win, and it's not like Stratton didn't have any. But now, you know, the question is, can Stratton branch out? Is she, can she, and I asked him that, I said, doesn't she need to prove that she's not just your candidate? And he's like, well, every candidate needs to do that in a general. So he said, you know, he believes she won because of the message on, you know, a higher minimum wage, on Medicare for all, things like that, that those were, it wasn't just anti-Trump.
And we took a live picture so the Republicans were having a breakfast this morning in Naperville. As we were coming on the air, Darren Bailey, who will be in a rematch now with Governor Pritzker, and Don Tracy, who will be up against Juliana Stratton, both spoke. And Don Tracy had some really tough words about her. One, talking about the money that was spent. Well, both of them talked about the money that was spent, be it J.B. Pritzker's money, but then also differentiating himself in terms of wanting people to, or supporting workers in the state. He says that she supports welfare dependency. I mean, he had some really tough words for her, and this is just day one.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tall order for Don Tracy. One of the things that the stats from last night was that Democrats actually increased their turnout from last midterm, and Republicans went down. So the turnout was far lower for Republicans all over the state of Illinois than Democrats. Now, it could be the Trump motivating factor. It could have been more competitive races, but the Republicans and Don Tracy are going to have to go on some kind of massive turnout the vote campaign or new registration campaign to match these numbers here, and you're going up again against Pritzker's wallet.
Darren said, this is Darren Bailey, he said, we don't have to match J.B. Pritzker dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
That people just need to vote.
And that's true. I mean, and the folks that spent the most money weren't necessarily the winners all the way around. So yes, the people just need to vote, but they're up against a math problem. They're up against we know how Chicago and Cook County goes, but now they're losing numbers downstate. There's some disunity too in terms of Ted Dabrowski. Is he going to endorse Bailey? Is he going to support him? There was some anger among conservative circles that they don't believe Bailey is a serious candidate, and they thought Dabrowski would have been maybe a more formidable challenge for Pritzker.
Yeah.
But, Bailey's got his work cut out for him to come up here to Chicago to try and get some vote up here.
And it was interesting that in that press conference, he said, someone asked him about Ted Dabrowski, and he said, I thought he would be up here with me talking right now. He never showed
There
up.
was
I don't
no
know what that
unity.
was about. But
No unity. No, I think there's some bad blood there in terms of, like, they said, Bailey had your turn, and it didn't work 4 years ago. What do you think? Why is it going to be different this year? And look at the headwinds for Republicans. The price of gas, the war in Iran, these things are not going well.
The tightrope also between supporting Trump and shying away from some of the things that would not work in the
Bailey
state of
is
Illinois.
a true blue Trump supporter. How long will Republicans stay on as poll numbers continue to go down? And Trump's poll numbers kind of always stay around 41%. But as the price of oil has gone up, that's something that will shock people in their wallet, and that's what motivates people to maybe look at politics and who's in charge right now. But
so does it seem like J.B. Pritzker is at all concerned about this rematch?
For sure. I mean, he came out swinging today. When I interviewed him, he said Darren Bailey. I asked him. I said, people are upset about high property taxes in Illinois. Darren Bailey will make that case. He said, well, Darren Bailey was on a county board, and he was on a school board downstate, and he voted to raise property taxes. He did nothing to bring down property taxes when he was in the legislature. And he said, in fact, I have, because the biggest driver of property tax spending is public schools, and it's because the state has contributed not as much as it should over the years, and I'm the one that's ramping up the state contribution, which is the number one thing that could provide some relief on property taxes. Now, we'll see if that plays out. But he comes out swinging. I don't think he's going to take it lightly. I think he's going to spend money. I think he's trying to define Darren Bailey right away.
They already have billboards up.
Yeah.
To which Aaron Del Mar, who is the lieutenant governor candidate, said, well, they're focusing on, he said, it's no secret that he and Darren Bailey had a contentious start to their relationship, but they sat down like adults. These are his words. They sat down like adults. They worked through it and figured out how they can work together to better the state. And he said, so Democrats are focusing on the early start of our relationship instead of the issues in the state.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting tack, and I hadn't been aware of that, actually. I mean, what Pritzker, he and his lieutenant governor candidate, Christian Mitchell, tried to kind of make the case that, maybe Bailey's tone has changed a little bit, but they still believe that he's a guy that thinks abortion is worse than the Holocaust. He's, those kind of paraphrasing what he said.
Statements, yeah.
And that, he wants to take money from public schools to give it to religious private schools. So they're trying to really scare people, I think, and define Bailey early and say, like, as much as, maybe you're not happy about high property taxes and costs in Illinois, this guy is scary if you're a certain kind of voter.
To which Darren Bailey last night, even in his acceptance speech, you heard him say, like, yes, my accent is funny, but I can still lead this state. And then today it was interesting to see him say, Chicago, I'll be there soon, given his former comments about Chicago.
About being a hellhole, and he realized that wasn't going to play. It plays downstate.
Yeah.
It plays in certain media circles we know very well. It's their go-to, but it doesn't play here. And there might be Republican voters that are disaffected, but you start slamming Chicago, even some of those voters might be, well, hold on a second, and he's taking a different tone now. And so he moved into the Hancock Center 4 years ago. Will he move into an apartment up here this time? And we had an analyst last night, Jamal Green, who said, well, maybe you should move into Englewood. Should move into a public housing. And
He'll have some stories.
He'll have some stories.
And he'll meet some new people.
But I would, he ran kind of a Rose Garden campaign. He was not up here. He wanted to get where all the red areas are, get that, squared away. He did. But now he's got to come up here and get a chunk of people up here. He doesn't have to win Cook County, but he's got to get a certain amount of votes, a lot of them, and then add that into a dominating downstate.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big uphill battle, but I do expect we will see a lot of them up here.
Well, it is very interesting to see, now that we know the matchups, what the initial statements are already as we get ready for several more months to go ahead before we get to November. And of course, in the midst of that, the mayoral race will be kicking.
And the mayoral race is already going to ramp up now, and now we got the Bears Stadium battle back on, and I'm just trying to get through to my next bedtime.
Well,
and then we'll worry about the general. We'll worry about the general, just several hours away.
You're a ways away from it. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for coming
Anita.
up. We'll get ready
You got
for
it.
Chicago Report tonight.
Chicago Report, we got that full interview with Governor Pritzker and Darren Bailey. They will be taking some swings at each other. It'll be juicy.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Give us 2 minutes, everybody. We'll be right back. All right, it's 3:28 right now. We know a lot of people are getting ready for spring break travel or in the midst of it already. And there's some popular destinations throughout the country where you might want to be a little extra cautious about bed bugs. Yeah, nobody wants to have to deal with them, but Terminex is giving us some information about what we should do when we encounter them or how to stay away from them altogether. Eric Braun, who is a bed bug expert, is joining me now. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Okay, where are we talking about when we say some most affected U.S. cities? Where are some of them?
Well, it's really any major metropolitan area. So any major city or any city that might be a travel destination could certainly be a hotbed for bed bug activity. Since bed bugs are expert hitchhikers, they rely on us to take them places. So where we go, they go. So anywhere that we might travel to or from are certainly areas where we could find certainly a high level of bed bug infestations.
So what precautions should we take when we're traveling?
Be aware of your surroundings. So when you get to your location, do a brief inspection to uncover any bed bug activity that you might notice. You're going to look for things like live insects, their fecal remains that they leave behind in nooks and crannies around sleeping areas. anything that might look off, you want to check it out and make sure that you're not moving into a space or in a space that has a current bed bug infestation.
Let's say you get home and you realize, like, you think you see one or something. I mean, is there ever just one, first and foremost? And then two, what do you do?
Well, they can start off as one. One single introduction can lead to an infestation. Now, it will take time, but if you see something that you might expect is a bed bug, take a photo of it, save it as a sample, and call a professional. Trying to do it yourself, DIY treatments for bed bugs are rarely effective, especially when they've been an established population. They can hide in smallest nooks and crannies in a home, and unless you know what you're doing, it can be very complicated to control or get rid of. So take a photo, save a sample, call a professional, get an inspection done to see if you actually have an issue.
How long can they hitchhike?
I don't have a time, as long as they want to. So it's usually from a destination to another destination. So if you're traveling to a vacation spot and you stay at a hotel and they climb into a nook and cranny on your suitcase, they could stay on that suitcase for the rest of your travel. And when you get home, they could crawl out and crawl into your bedroom or into wherever you have your suitcase stored and potentially start an infestation from that point.
So let's say you just got home from your spring break travel. What should you do to make sure you're not bringing these too far into your home?
So what I would do is unpack, not in your bedroom, right? I would take my clothing directly to the dryer, place it in the dryer. High heat will kill all bed bug eggs and the actual insects themselves. So that drying will kill almost immediately. Well, once it reaches a certain temperature, it will kill those items, any infested bed bugs or eggs in those items. And then you would launder it traditionally, put it through the washer, put it through the dryer again. My suitcases, I would inspect thoroughly, and I would go as far as not storing them in any area where I would be spending some time sleeping, like my bedroom. I would store them in a basement or a garage or an attic, someplace far away, just in case I missed during my inspection any of the insects on my suitcase.
And let's just say someone doesn't catch it right away. How bad can this get?
It depends on how long it goes unchecked. So severe infestations can take 45 to 60 days, but they will certainly build up to that point. It usually is 30 to 45 days until they build up a population high enough for an average person to identify something's going on. After that, it can get quite extensive, and you can talk about thousands of insects infesting certain areas if you don't take some sort of action quickly.
Oh my, okay. I'm going to try to keep my lunch in me. Thank you so much for at least making us aware and helping us to, maybe do things a little bit differently as we come and go. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Oh, goodness. All right, everybody. 3:33. Let's get in a 2-minute break. Our chief meteorologist just came in, so let's get an update on the weather when we come back. We're back at 3:35, and our ever-changing weather throughout the week is now trending in the right direction?
Moving in the right direction, yes. So, you know, we mentioned this yesterday,
Mhm.
Anita, that yesterday was the worst of it. It was the coldest day that we were going to be experiencing. We woke up to sub-zero wind chills in a couple locations, and it was cold all day. We had high temperatures that were only in the 20s. Today, a little bit of a different story. It looks more beautiful outside. You
More
can see
people
the-
out and about.
Yes, you can see the sunshine hitting the buildings. And of course, we were actually waking up to, you know, a couple snow showers around the area this morning. Not a pretty sight that you want to see at this point in March, but you know what? We did it. And with temperatures right around 40 degrees now, it's pretty much all melted away. So we're in good shape. And the winds aren't so bad. And the next couple of days really, really look stunning. So tomorrow, we're expected to see possibly a couple sprinkles to get the day started, but the chance for that actually looks even lower than what it did yesterday.
Okay.
So I think a lot of us are going to get through tonight, tomorrow morning, likely with dry skies, just mostly cloudy in the morning, and then we'll start to see decreasing cloud cover through the day. So kind of a really similar day tomorrow to what we have right now. It's just going to be a little bit warmer. So we'll wake up in the low 30s, and then we're going to warm up to about 52 degrees during the afternoon. Average now sits around 48. So, you know, the next few days we're staying above average. Then Friday and Saturday come along looking
pristine.
Amazing. Yes. Although on Friday there is a catch. So Friday at the lakefront across Northeast Illinois, of course that does include the city of Chicago, we're going to be running a little bit cooler in the afternoon. So there's going to be a lake breeze that pushes in. Wouldn't be surprised if lakefront communities only make it into the 50s.
Okay.
But that 63, that's for O'Hare and inland locations. So the farther
Still not
inland
bad.
that you are, you're going to be in the 60s. And then on Saturday, make your plans outdoors, 68 degrees. And you know, I still, Anita, think that I'm kind of playing this conservative, but I don't want to get everybody's hopes up that we're looking at 70s, although there are still a couple models that are trying to bring in those 70s. So I'm not committed to it yet, but we're definitely trending warmer for this weekend. And then Sunday, falling temps through the day. So the warmest point of the day is going to be in the morning, and then we're going to drop into the 40s during the afternoon. So just kind of be prepared for that extra chill in the air Sunday afternoon. But that 20%, it's not for snow, everybody. It is for rain, and we will take that because I think we're all done with the snowflakes. We don't want to see those anymore.
Yeah, you know, so going into the last week of March.
Yeah. Which I kind of feel like March came in like a lamb and turned into a lion. So we
roared halfway through.
Yes, we'd be happy if we can get back to that lamb stage that we had at the first of the month, you know? Things have been so busy. We've been in between a lot of really strong storm systems. We've had several bouts of severe weather. We've had tornadoes in the area. We've had snow in the area. I mean, it's just, we've been all over the map.
We really have.
Over the last week and a half to 2 weeks.
Yeah, winter weather, spring weather, and just kind of hedging our bets on which one is going to win out.
Yeah, well,
essentially.
eventually we know spring will win.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later would be nice, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. We will see cooler conditions again Sunday into Monday,
and I think
but it looks short-lived.
Sunday, I want to say, is the Shamrock Run.
Okay.
Yep, I think
well, you know
they're
what?
going to check that behind me, but I want to say it's this Sunday is the Shamrock Shuffle. It's usually right after
and
St.
those are
Patrick's
usually in
Day.
the morning,
Right, but
So-
they'll appreciate it being a little cooler.
Yeah,
you know?
and on Sunday, high temperatures are going to be in the 50s. That's going to be in the morning. So I still think, you know, if you're a runner, 50s is pretty good, right?
48 is like ideal. So 50s,
okay.
fantastic.
Yeah, so then Sunday looks great.
Yeah.
We're going to be nice and mild, upper 40s, low 50s during the morning. And then we will drop into the 40s during the afternoon. But for the most part, yeah, it looks great for runners then.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff. It's like the unofficial start of the running season when the Shamrock Shuffle rolls around.
Is there beer at the end?
You know, listen, there's beer at the end
Let
of
me live
almost every
vicariously
race.
through you, okay? 8 months into this pregnancy, no beer. Looking forward to someday.
You're getting there like spring. We're getting to spring, you're getting ready for baby to be here.
Yeah. And some beer on the other side of it.
And beer on the other side.
If I'm being honest.
You'll get back to that as well.
Yeah, I will.
Thanks for coming up. We know we have you a little bit later than usual, but we'll get you downstairs for the 4 o'clock news. Everybody, just feast your eyes on this weekend. hopefully we have like arrived.
I think we have. Brief little cool down early next week, but then we're right back at it. So things look good.
It's not too far away from Easter too, so that's another thing where people are starting to like, oh, well, how am I gonna put my little baby in all the Easter, stuff, all of that. So are they gonna have to put like an extra coat over the cute little fluffy dress and all that kind of stuff, or
Hope not.
Yeah, hope not. Okay, let's take a 2-minute break, everybody. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. It's just about 3:45 right now. Of course, we're coming off of primary elections here in the state of Illinois last night, and they're in Washington, D.C. They're actually in the midst of a pretty heated debate over the Save America Act, a proposal supporters say would strengthen election integrity, but opponents argue would make it harder for millions of Americans to vote. So we have been listening into some of the lawmakers as they've been debating this, and also DHS funding and the partial government shutdown. We're going to listen into this for a bit.
Box check exercise to something that an election authority can actually verify in an individual assessment. That provision, by the way, was introduced by a Democrat congressman, passed by a Democrat-led Senate, and signed into law by a Democrat president. Oh, how times have changed. I've seen a clip recently of the minority leader begging for fraud protections, begging that photo ID be presented when people vote. But something has happened. The Democrat Party has been completely radicalized and believes that illegal immigrants should be able to come here, never have to leave, and now vote in our elections. But today, that same common sense idea that I just mentioned is slandered as Jim Crow. The Democrats claim that the bill text disenfranchises married women and name changes. That's also false. The text of the bill makes plain as day that married women, they're not going to have to re-register to vote. All they have to do is attest that they're an American citizen. And they're afraid of these facts because they know if people are aware of the facts, this remains an 80-20 issue, a 90-10 issue. And it makes it really hard for them to explain their no vote. It couldn't be any easier. This is common sense. It's actually insane and ridiculous that we have to debate this. So their talking points are wrong. It's reckless. And again, an attempt to frighten the American people. They claim it abolishes absentee voting. That's also false. It ends the failed COVID-era experiment of mass mail-in voting by default, the same disorder that weakened the chain of custody, blurred deadlines, and undermined public confidence. When the leftist lawyers streamed all across this country in 2020 trying to undermine voter integrity laws, when I was Attorney General in Missouri, we stood up, we fought back, we won all 3 cases. We didn't settle those cases and allow some ridiculous election process where ballots are just sent out whether people requested them or not, random drop boxes all over, no way to verify the votes, deadlines didn't matter. This bill actually does preserve absentee voting for Americans with real needs, our military members, the disabled, caregivers, in verified hardship cases, those who are sick, those who are traveling, and others. They claim it triggers mass purges of lawful citizens. That's false. They know it. In other words, the pattern here is simple. They don't want to debate what's actually in the bill. They want to terrify people with things that are not actually in the bill. Because the truth is that this amendment, the substitute amendment that I've offered, is built on 3 propositions that normal Americans understand immediately. Citizenship matters. Biological reality matters. And protecting children matters. Mr. President, this Senate was not sent here to traffic in slogans or manage decline. As America approaches her 250th birthday, the least we can do is prove that self-government still means something, that a nation still has the right to define membership, that elections still deserve rules, that women and girls still deserve protection, that children still deserve adults willing to defend them. Read the text, debate the text, then have the courage to vote for it. The time for excuses is over. The time to govern and to defend our republic has arrived. Pass the Save America Act. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, we've been listening in to a part of the discussion there as the senators have been laying out their case for and against the SAVE Act. And primarily we heard from Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt. A while ago we saw a short clip of Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia, who was also speaking. And so we've heard from both sides here as they have been kind of going back and forth over this. Now, under the proposal, voters would be required to provide 2 forms of identification at the polls, such as a passport or a birth certificate. The bill would also require people to register to vote in person. And that would mark, of course, a significant change in some states where voters only have to show 1 form of ID right now and can register online or by mail. So opponents of the bill point out that there are claims of widespread voter fraud have been rejected in court time and time again, that the legislation targets a problem that's not supported by evidence, essentially, and that's a bit of what Senator Eric Schmidt was countering there. Southern Poverty Law Center warns that the proposal would disproportionately affect rural voters, low-income residents, and people who do not have access, easy access to the documents that the bill would require them to have. So again, your birth certificate or a driver's license, a U.S. passport, for example. And if you wanted to go get those things, the cost that would be associated with those things. So that's a part of it. You heard them mentioning, Senator Schmidt also mentioning the aspect that's been brought up many times about married women, name changes, and whether that would become an issue. Again, the Southern Poverty Law Center says that they estimate that this could affect 69 million married women nationwide that may not have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name, which would complicate efforts to meet their new documentation requirements. But of course, Republicans like Missouri Senator Schmidt say this is all fear-mongering, that this plays into non-citizens being able to vote. If you look at some areas in terms of how often or not that might happen, multiple states' nonprofits have tracked that issue, and they report that non-citizen voting is extremely rare. It's also illegal, regardless of what state you live in. So the House has already moved that bill forward. The Senate, as we were looking at there, it's now in the Senate's hands here. So they still have to go over this, and it's still unclear whether they have enough support to pass this. They had talked earlier in the week about doing like a procedural vote just to kind of see where they stand, essentially. If it becomes law, there would be some major changes. So they're trying to decide whether they even have enough votes within their own party to get it forward in the Senate. And so that back and forth is continuing there. I believe they were recognizing Senator from Louisiana to speak next. But again, they're just going state to state, hearing from these different senators about the SAVE Act that has so many people kind of looking to see what will happen next. And again, the impacts from it, because there are many who point to voter suppression, essentially, that this is tantamount to voter suppression. Is it voter suppression, or is it voter integrity? That's essentially how far apart we are in terms of Republicans and Democrats, what their arguments are on this. Either it's voter suppression or protecting voter integrity. And so they're going to continue to argue that out. Let's get in a 2-minute break, though, and we'll be back to close out the show. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Before we get out of here, let me give you just a bit of pieces of stories that will come in the 4 o'clock hour, first at 4. So let's go to our live shot outside of City Hall because they have been busy today. We just got word that the Chicago City Council has approved a proposed $27 million settlement for the family of a mother of 6 who was killed in a tragic 2017 collision resulting from an unauthorized Chicago police pursuit through a Southside residential neighborhood. This was 47-year-old Stacy Von Harrell, who was killed on June 24th, 2017, when Chicago police officers allegedly violated their own training and their general orders by pursuing a vehicle in an unmarked SUV without activating their siren to warn others of the oncoming danger. So that is one of the stories that we're going to be following in the 4 o'clock hour on First at 4. Also, and you can see Joni Lum is getting ready for her live shot there outside of City Hall. She'll be on that story there. Another big story coming out of City Hall just in the last hour here, tipped workers. Tipped workers got a bit of a lifeline. Today, the City Council voted to permanently freeze the phase out of the city's tip credit for restaurants, capping the credit at 24% of the state's regular minimum wage. So those are two big stories that Joni will be on in our next broadcast, First at 4. We hope to see you back here tomorrow from 1 to 4 p.m. As always, we appreciate you being here today. Plenty more to come in the next broadcast. So stay right here. They're about 10 seconds away.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Terrence Lee.
And I'm Sylvia Perez. Weather is first at 4.